Okay, so just like the last panel discussion, just kind of be open question. If you do have a question, comment, or anything, come up to the microphone over here. So, Stefan, thank you for sharing what you shared. There was a lot of people who came up to me and said, "Thanks for having Stefan do that," because it answered a lot of questions for them. And I know you're late for your flight, and we had to switch the schedule around, and but glad you were able to make it. So thank you, Stefan. And then Adam, he has kind of a tight schedule, so he wasn't able to be out here very long. But at least you got to see the demo, and like I mentioned on vril.io, on the products page, there will be a page. It's probably within the next few days or so, if I can swing it, to get all the information. Adam has 3 or 4 videos that's on his YouTube account. And do you want to say what your YouTube channel is again?
Well, I believe it's Adam Griffin, but there's more than one. If you look up ESTC 2019 Aaron Adam, you'll find the channel. Okay. Or you can contact me at griffin.adam.h@gmail.com.
Okay. And so we'll make all that information available on how you can purchase a kit. And so here we go. Okay, no problem. It might have been, we had a little change in the schedule to start a little bit earlier, so yeah. So anyway, thanks Adam for bringing that demo out and showing it, and I think there's going to be a lot more things that Adam's going to be able to help share with us, and be part of the team. So, Kurt, so he's been working with Dr. Pollack for a long time, so he's definitely an expert in the whole field of the this interesting water technology and science, and off and on periodically we'll get on the phone and I'll bounce some questions off of him, and we start talking about different stuff, and it'll go off in whatever direction. And glad you're not too far away, just on the other side of the state.
Yeah.
And so not having a conventional background myself in a lot of this kind of stuff, he's able to explain a lot of it to me, in pretty easy terms that I can actually understand what he's talking about, and being willing to fly over here to be with us again this year and as a presenter, and hope to probably see more of you and more of your work. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, the feeling's mutual for sure. Thanks.
And then Mike here. I like to see the enthusiasm and how passionate you actually are about this, and how much it means to you, that it's not just some hobby, but it's really coming from within, what's kind of driving you, the motivation to kind of move this forward, because it's very important, it's needed. And I didn't know that your friend Norman was the Norman with the Lockridge stuff going back to Bedini way back. So that makes it even more interesting. So, but this is not an easy thing to haul around here and set up. You can see, a couple 100 pounds of batteries and all this, and what I like about what Mike said, that he brings it here and it's actually working at the conference. And how many conferences have you been to or known about that it's always something just conveniently doesn't work? So therefore we can't show you anything, and it's the opposite. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. So thanks for being here, Mike.
You bet. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So somebody may have a tent that's set up back here, and it's rolling like a tumbleweed down the field.
It's turned into a beach ball.
And then Walt, first we had you scheduled to come, and then we didn't, and then we did, or something. I don't know what happened, but the communication lines kind of got crossed. But you were kind enough to come up a couple years ago. I know that Moray King and you have been kind of communicating for a long time, and he speaks very highly of you, and looking at a lot of things that he has over the years, and he's kind of excited about my plasma ignition technology. Didn't talk about it this weekend. I've already, there's a lot of stuff online about that. And, he mentions he thinks that might be one of the ultimate, combos. And what we see through this conference is not a lot of fighting and ego and stuff like that. I've seen more collaboration come out of this conference between developers behind the scene working with each other on projects than I have at any other event like this, where everybody's kind of focused on their thing. And, Paul had a hand in some of the early development of the switching circuits on, Mike's work, and with Eric Dollard and some of the other people. And so we really see this mesh of and a synergy of different people's expertise and what they're willing to share kind of come together. And, Paul's been working with a lot of people and has met several people through the conference, Jim Murray and Dennis and collaborating. And so there's a lot more stuff going on behind the scenes than what's really shown here at the conference. And at the right time, different things will come forward. And there's some pretty amazing things that will absolutely blow your mind if you knew all really what's going on. And it's not just kind of kept for secret or whatever. It's like there's no point in just teasing somebody with a certain something if it's just kind of an idea or whatever. But when it's actually to a point that it's, like in a final form or whatever, then it's ready. But with your, technology, and Walt has his patented, but he's kind of taken it beyond what his patent is, and he's been working on this stuff for a long time. And I'm kind of a hydrogen fuel fanatic myself on doing this kind of stuff, having built a jet engine that, mostly runs on water, but it still kind of needs some propane and that kind of thing. And I think it was a conference a couple years ago, which was the first time you even came forward to an event like this to even discuss it. And so, this time around, I'm glad that you continue to, move on the same path, and you're here to kind of give some updates. And, everything goes well. Hopefully we see you up here next year in an RV or, whatever kind of vehicle running on this technology. So thanks for being here.
Okay, thanks.
Walt Jenkins. Does anyone here at the table have anything they want to start with? Comments or anything you want to share with the audience, or any kind of thoughts on anything, just relating to the science in general, or encouraging people, who might be new to this and, how to get started, or
My tech or
on
just
any,
in
or
general? Any tech.
yeah, or if anybody has any questions, just feel free to come up to the mic. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a research physicist from San Diego. I started studying a lot of these strange things 30, 40 years ago. One thing that I have noticed is the lack of ability of universities to be able to utilize this new things that we are working on that they think is impossible. As part of my homework to study before I came here, this is my first time, even though I've been studying this for different things for many years. One of your emails announced the passing away of Myron Evans. I've been waiting for somebody to come out, and this may be the wrong panel for this, but as a physicist, less than 30 days ago, I've got his book covering a lot of these new theories that now unify electrodynamics, gravitation, allows for the energy from the vacuum, low energy stuff. To be able to engineer these products, we have to get the theoretical background where we should have 10,000 postdocs in all the universities working on this to be able to engineer this so that this is not a work sometimes, not work other times. From the theories in this book, it should be able to engineer this, prove that this is not magic, so that we can get 10,000 people. Every university needs to teach the new theories, but because they've been wrong for 100 years, there's a lot of pushback. And I was wondering, is there some reason this panel has not brought this up more, since your announcement of his death allowed me to go to his websites and completely blow away the answers to the questions that I've been complaining about all of my life as a physicist. But apparently, from this, all of Einstein's work is incomplete. There are no black holes. There are no Big Bang theories. There are no Higgs bosons. The whole standard model of physics is blown out the window. The $100 billion European CERN super collider that they spent $100 billion on is chasing ghosts because their theories are incorrect. As the problem is, I'm 79 now. I don't have 30 years to go back over and memorize all the stuff that I forgot 30 years ago. Is there some reason you have not mentioned his work, since you're the one that got me onto it? Because I've been following Tom Bearden and them for 30, 40 years, and he considered this man, Myron Evans, to be the top physicist in the world. Is there any comment?
In 2015, Dr. Lindstrom presented on ECE theory.
Oh, did he?
And who has worked with Myron Evans, and so we did have somebody representing some of the work involving
Okay.
Myron Evans. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm a newbie, so I know
okay,
what to
yeah.
do. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So,
Is there some reason?
that's the only presenter that has been at this conference in the last 8 years who has anything to do with Myron Evans. So.
But did he prove it, disprove it? Did he like it? Did he not like it?
He was looking at Dr. Lindstrom talked about several technologies that were proven to basically be over unity.
Yeah.
He didn't really go deep into Myron Evans' theories or anything. You know, as you say, Tom Bearden considered him to be the most important physicist alive. With a lot of us, what we'll see with people who are representing his work, Tony Craddock produces a lot of the material for, Tom Bearden,
Yeah.
had certain arrangements with John Bedini and so forth. And so anything along those lines would have come out through Tony's production company. So anybody he would be working with probably would not be presenting here, most likely.
Yeah, well, I was just curious because that affects everything that you're trying to design until you get the basic facts through experimental evidence.
Yeah.
Not the onesie-twosies in the garage hidden away, but where it's in universal, where they can now publish it through the open press, not by all his data. They would not accept it in the open press, so it's all
Sure.
online. But that's allowed, just like we're doing. Thousands and thousands of people around the world are working on this now.
My problem with universities has been getting thrown out the door.
Yes, because the physics that they were taught, this is impossible. This says it's engineerable.
Exactly.
Well, I can't really speak for Myron Evans' work because I don't understand it. I haven't spent enough time to look at it. I'm not really qualified to say either way, but I'm pretty confident in saying he's not the only one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I know that have models, and they all work, and they predict the results. Look at Dr. Frederick Alzafon. He had his own entire, developed unified field model and developed a working gravity control system, which his son presented on and published all of his work without holding anything back. His model isn't Myron Evans' model, so I don't know if Myron Evans is the most important physicist who was alive. I have my own model. I couldn't do a quadratic equation to save my life. but I don't need the math. I'm interested in the natural principles of how the universe operates, and based on my own model, I can predict almost the result of every experiment I've ever done. And the same holds for other people that I know that have their own models. So, but I think, you know, as long as most of them are kind of moving in the same direction, they're going to see something different than, you know, what you're mentioning about Einstein's work being kind of incomplete. In my opinion, with basic Newtonian, you know, 8th grade formulas and 3rd grade mathematics, you can disprove Einstein.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say in regards to that.
Okay. I appreciate your efforts on here, and I will start my own things to gig the universities a little bit, because the big problem is the universities teachers are teaching what they were taught.
Sure.
Nobody's going back and really questioning the experiments.
Yeah.
Their whole thing is when the evidence, their theories don't match the evidence, they add correction factors. And that's why it's gotten them such a mess.
If there's any way our network can help you in supporting rocking the boat, let us know.
You're putting it out, you're building the equipment, they're working on the bench.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Stefan.
Is this on? Okay. I would like to encourage everybody, because I think it's possible, to help in realizing little models, little toys, desktop models that show phenomena, that show effects, that really trash some of the physical models. These are things you can just put on the table. If they are cheap, it makes people scratching their head, and it will be a contribution to changing the mindset and people asking themselves questions. I give you one example. The water battery from Clarke. It wouldn't be a big deal to make a little unit like this with a voltmeter. You put it on the table, you pour water in, and it just works. I'm myself working on such a toy, which is a resonance system. I don't want to say more in case I fail, because it's a bit difficult to realize. But I'm working on a project to realize a desktop model of a mechanical unit. And there are many other effects here that could be replicated in little toys and little models. It could be inexpensive and be spread. They are harmless. They are not making megawatts or kilowatts, but they are a contributor to do a change in the mindset. So I want to encourage everybody to help to realize such models. That's it.
Just have additional 2 comments. So this is, I think, an issue that we more or less has been encountered in the past. So 2 folds of my comments. First one, in a funny way, have you heard of a unicorn theory? So it's very simple. If I tell you I have a cute dog in my backyard, would you believe me? Most of you would. I mean, why not? Cute dogs are everywhere. But if I tell you I have a unicorn in my backyard, would you believe me? You probably want to see some evidence first. So if you work on something extraordinary, then more than often you want to provide extraordinary evidence. That is something that we have to keep that in mind. We have to raise the bar. And second fold of the comment is the communication. It's already difficult enough to make something that hasn't been worked before work. But it's even more difficult, in my opinion, to communicate properly, to get the message across and people can take it. Nobody wants to get challenged like what they have learned in the past life is completely bullshit. It might be, it might not be, but if you want to communicate properly, you got to put your foot in other people's shoes. And I think that's a little bit easier for the communication. That's my comment.
Yeah, I had a question, might be directed more to Mr. Jenkins. Do you have an idea of the comparison of the flame speed in your water fuel versus just, some type of isooctane?
Well, I understand from what I've read that a hydrogen explosion, and that's just hydrogen, not what I'm doing, but I think it's 4,000 times the speed of the flame front is 4,000 times that of gasoline. That's the only relevant thing that I would answer that question, was because I don't have the technical equipment to measure the flame fronts in the technology we're using, but we are very close to getting a lab, a really nice lab set up, and we plan to put quartz windows inside of single-cylinder engines with very high-speed cameras, and so we'll be able to measure that stuff.
Do you, in the current running motors, are you having to retard the ignition timing to?
What was the last part? Are we having to what?
Retard the ignition timing?
No.
So you're running
we work on
advanced?
standard ignition timing.
Okay.
That was one of the first things I wanted to get away from, because if you run hydrogen and HHO type engines, if you're trying to run them on just that, you're going to change the timing.
Right, they need to be retarded back to
But
zero.
my technology is very different from electrolysis. We don't separate hydrogen and oxygen outside the engine. We take advantage of the fact that it's in the fuel in the engine, and in the combustion process, it's automatically released in the heat and the pressure and in the flame propagation of that fuel. So when on the particles side of the equation, if you were to imagine a London type fog, there are billions of particles of water there. If you put those into a combustion engine and they've been properly treated, what happens is they will explode, and the flame front will propagate throughout the whole engine, throughout the whole cylinder at the same time. But it will also release 3 properties of propulsion or fuel that water has, and electrolysis only takes advantage of 2. It also takes a lot of energy outside the engine itself to separate oxygen and hydrogen, and put the dry gases in and use those for explosion. But for over 100 years, the world was powered by steam. It's one of the most powerful elements in water. It expands 1,700 times. And so in my process, I use that and hydrogen and oxygen. Everything that's available as a fuel in water is available in the engine and used. So we have steam exploding at 700 times, or 1,700 times expansion, which is the pressure on the cylinder to drive it down. We also have the oxygen and hydrogen exploding. And so it's a totally different process. And one of the problems with electrolysis is the approach. And that is the approach was to extract the fuel and put the fuel in the engine. And because that's energy intensive and the gains aren't as much as they should be, even with the most efficient ones. If you ignore that and say, well, what am I after really? I'm after the engine running on water. I'm not after extracting energy from water. That's outside the engine. I want the energy in the engine. So you put all the water in the engine and you get all of it. So, but as far as your question on the flame front, I don't have the technical equipment to make that research right now, but I will when I do.
Do you
And
have
why is that important to you?
I was just curious because
okay.
Closer to the mic.
Yeah, it's a subject that interests me because it has some
Yeah.
vehicles with big engines, and so.
Well, I can tell you that it's very fast.
Yeah, okay. Do you happen to have a feeling or an idea whether the material that's actually going into the combustion chamber after it's been through your device is monatomic or not?
Well, and I don't know.
Okay.
I know paratom was it the other one was para something?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was more to do with electrolysis and waveforms that you're using to generate it. So,
Okay.
but I don't think that matters because I'm not putting hydrogen separated as a gas into the engine, and I'm not using pure oxygen either. I mean, basically, if you take an anvil and you heat it really hot, and you drip sweat or even a drop of water on it, and when that water hits the anvil, if you smash it with a hammer at the same time it hits, it will explode, absolutely blow up, kick back the hammer.
Okay.
You can try that.
I might try that. I have a
Yeah.
lab. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, I have a comment about the engine. You want to ask a question next, Gene? Okay. So you were talking about putting a quartz window on the engine to look
Yeah.
into it. So if you go on YouTube, I can't remember his name. I communicated with him by email a little bit, but you can search on YouTube for, I don't know, something like see-through engine, and he has a little generator-sized engine.
Does he
And
sell them?
with the what?
Does he sell those?
He doesn't sell them. What he has is a super high
yeah.
speed, so you can see real super slow motion, all the activity in the engine. He was using acrylic, so after a bit it starts
Yeah.
to crack.
Yeah.
Acrylic's pretty fragile.
Yeah.
I'd probably like you use like a
Yeah,
Lexan
quartz.
polycarbonate or something like that.
And I would use a quartz.
Yeah.
I'd have it ground.
So, but you should look at those videos because that's
Okay.
pretty cool
Yeah.
to do that. But my reason for contacting him was because I want to see the plasma ignition,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
going off in an
Well,
engine
when I
like
get
that.
built, we'll fly down and we'll do it.
Test it, yeah.
Bring your
That'd be
system,
cool.
yeah.
Okay.
I also have my own plasma system, as you know, but it's cool. I'd like to try them both, see.
Yeah.
I do have a comment about the university thing because I had some experience there. My friend Larry talked me into going to the University of Florida, and we went to the incubation part of the university. It was a kind of quasi-separate department, and it was called the Hub. So he gets an appointment there, and I was kind of against it because I've dealt with academia before, and I have a high degree of contempt for most academicians. Not all, but most, because the ones that I have a contempt for are the condescending, arrogant assholes who think they know everything. So we go there, and his idea was we would get them to invest in our technology, and we would create an endowment fund from our profits once we grow up and become a big company. And so it seemed like a good idea. So we go there, and my opinions about academia were absolutely reinforced to the nth degree. I sat there, explained a bit about my technology, and probably more than I should have. And there's a guy sitting over in front of me, and he has patents on stuff, and medical machines, I think. And there's another guy who's a banker, and there's a guy at the end of the table who's just a highly degreed asshole. And then there's two ladies who work in the office. And so this patent guy is telling me, oh, you should come up here and give us an open box demonstration, totally transparent, explain how it all works. And I said, no, I'm not doing the open box, but I'll do a demonstration, and you can measure what it goes in and what comes out, and that'll tell you all you need to know. And so the patent guy says to me, and he's probably 40 years old, maybe 50. I was 69. I was 69 at the time, I think. I'd been around in the world a lot longer than he had, and I also worked in the real world, not in the university. So he says to me, well, you shouldn't be afraid of that because if you have a patent, you're 100% protected. And I thought, this guy's a dumbass. What the hell? I said, do you know what a patent is? And he says, yeah, I have 3 of them. And I said, well, I've got one, and it's going around the world, and I'll tell you what. All it is an invitation to court. Because big people that want to do what you want to do, they're going to do it anyway and tell you to kiss their ass and sue me. And the guy that goes into court, it better be damn smart and on the whole really good at law. Because usually it's who has the most money and time and pays the most lawyers going to win anyway. And so patents are not really protection. Patents are a fake kind of protection that in the real world don't matter for beans. And I had a couple, the head of the Seminole Nation in Florida, Chief Billy, I sat across the table from him. I was trying to get him to invest in our company. And he basically told me to my face, he said, I don't care about your patents. I don't give an F about your patents. He said, patents, we break patents all the time. We don't care. Who's going to sue us? We got more money than God. Because they have gambling and all that tied into very organized type people. So my thoughts on academia is that, and if anyone in this room, I know Robert's an academic. Oh, he's sleeping. But he's a good friend of mine. I like him. But and he's an exception to what I'm about to say. But I've met many types of academics, and even when I was in college. And I would categorize them into 2 kinds of people, although there's obviously many more people than that in the world. But there are certain people who get a degree, and they're in this discipline they're in, and they're brainwashed by whatever they were taught, and they think that dogma is actually the end of it. Now they're here, they're at the top. No, they're at the top of where it was 30 years ago when the guy teaching them actually learned what he learned and didn't learn anything else until he taught it to the next guy. So they're usually way behind the curve, but that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is if you get to an academic position in life and you're highly paid and you're in this quasi-prestigious position, don't let it go to your head, because the worst thing you can do to somebody else is be an arrogant asshole and condescend to them. And this guy was sitting at the end of the table, said to me, well, we don't think we can work with you. And I said, well, why is that? And he says, well, because you don't listen. And I said, really? I said, what do you mean? He says, the guy that was telling me about the patent was 100% protection. Now, anybody that says something that's stupid, obviously you don't follow his advice. And I pushed back and I said, well, it's just an invitation to court. He took offense to that because I talked back to this guy who had a degree and I didn't. He wasn't a degree in my field. And the guy that was doing all the talking and saying why they couldn't work with me, and he said, you couldn't possibly invent this because, do you have an engineering degree? And I said, no, I don't have any degree. I dropped out of college after 6 years of wasting my time. And I said, but I practically and empirically experimented and did what I wanted to do until it worked, and if it didn't work, I kept on until it did work. And I said, now it works. And I said, I don't care what your theories are about me not having a degree or why you should condescend the way you're doing it, all this stuff. And basically the meeting went south from there. I wasted my whole time. But these guys, two of them were extremely arrogant, and they were condescending, and that offended me greatly because they acted like if I didn't have a college degree, how did I invent that? And one of these guys was an engineer in the energy field. So there's all these presumptions that people make in life about status and position and degrees, and they mean nothing. Most of the guys that built Bill Gates, he never finished college. Steve Jobs never finished college. In my opinion, Steve Jobs is one of the brightest guys to come along in a century, And the educated guys with the suits, they came and bumped him out of his own company. They drove it off a cliff, and when it was near bankruptcy, they begged him to come back, and he built it up bigger than ExxonMobil. And so the asset in that company was Steve Jobs. It wasn't so much the tech he produced. But he didn't have a degree, so everybody that thinks academia is the epic center of the universe, it isn't. Okay, I've ranted enough. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you about a PhD who was not arrogant, and because in response to the gentleman who gave honor to Myron Evans, I guess can't let it go without mentioning brilliant and dear physicist Elizabeth Rauscher, who passed away recently. And if anybody knows anybody who both understands the physics, because I'm a journalist, I loved her for her spirit and learned from her, but I couldn't write about her ideas. I would love to see somebody work on a book about her life. Her life was like a history of our field. I mean, Maury King, who's spoken here before, mentions that Elizabeth Rauscher was the first to be open to and bring in concepts about zero-point energy in her papers. Couple hundred published papers. You can look up Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher. But the history is fascinating too. She was helped start the fundamental physics group in the Bay Area that had both the sense of humor and the kind of understanding of metaphysics and everything. And some of them went on to great fame. She was mentioned in that book, When the Hippies Saved Physics. But anyway, that would be a fascinating book, and I really encourage anybody who knows anybody who could write about Elizabeth Rauscher's life, and I just wanted to honor her too. Thank you.
Hi, my question involves this idea of technology transfer, which is how to responsibly come up with a plan to introduce new technologies, knowing how it displaces old technologies. And so you have governments, you have utilities, public utilities, and banks and corporations. All of them are interested in maintaining their, quote, status quo. So part of the plan has to be, if you introduce this new technology, ask how many people who work for those corporations and governments and utility companies, how would you like to get on board to what's the upcoming wave? All the young people are going to want to say, pick me, pick me. I want to learn how to build these things. I want to learn how to install these things. I want to learn how to maintain these things. And that's going to be your new population base for the new technology. Meanwhile, the old timers are near retirement. They'll slowly gauge down whatever they're doing. So in that context, do you have any ideas of how to make that work?
Yeah, my viewpoint, and it gets changed as I learn more and more, but you mentioned those levels and those entities as if they were separated and they were independent of one another, but somehow have common interests. Well, that's true on one level, but on a higher level, you have the economic domination of this planet by a few, very few, half of 1% maybe that much, more like 1% of 1%, who control most of the money through 44. I don't know if you ever heard of Catherine Hoods, Hudes. She worked for the World Bank. She was part of the World Bank, which is one of the higher level institutions of control points. And she organized other members at her level around the world to investigate. And the power structure, as I envision it and have been taught by very wise people who know, Rothschilds, Vatican, Queen of England. Okay, so through that network, 44,000 corporations basically are the organized, where you can last pinpoint the organization, then it filters into thinner streams. But they're basically all part of the same thing. That's why when you come out with something that makes a car go 200 miles a gallon, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to get crushed. Because the companies that you go to them and you say, oh, look, you're a car company, I can help you with the gas mileage. But what you don't realize is that that guy's an executive. He was handpicked to be put in there to run that company for profit and to suppress anything that isn't theirs. So theirs includes oil companies, because at the top of the oil companies, it's all the same guys own the car company, the oil company, and this and that. And so you're telling them, I have a system that will take profits away from your car company or your oil company. And if you implement it in your car company, you'll get 200 miles per gallon. What does the guy with the oil sector say? His bosses tell him that's going to ruin the oil sales and the gasoline sales, so don't do it. So guys like me who have technology that's very disruptive get squashed, put out of business, or otherwise it's very difficult to do what you want to do. You can't go into it innocently. You have to understand what organization you're up against. And you have to understand that the best way you can get something like a technology like mine or any other technology that disrupts the standard controlled entities that are running things is, if you can get them on your side, that's great. But likely as not, you'll get it stolen from you and you will be dumped out the back of the truck when it goes down the road. So,
okay, that being said, there's this growing movement towards the carbon tax thing.
Some of the other thing about that is, if you're going to do a lot of the things that we're talking about here and that we've talked about, you have to change the mindset of people. You have to change the mindset of 11% of the population. If you can change the mindset of 11% of the population, the rest will follow. And so it's a matter of education, and not like the university education where you're not really learning anything but how to regurgitate. But we have to, you have to make that it has to be part of what we do, is educating the public and getting, if we can get 10, 11, 12% of the people making that change, then it will make a societal change, and it will be a sea change then. That's what has to happen. And the only way we can do that is we just keep pushing the ideas, pushing that envelope out there. Because it's like, how many years ago was it that, how many people were going to have solar on their home? I'm involved with solar now, and it's incredible. I mean, I talk to anybody now, and they want solar. It's gone crazy. But that was very slow to start, and now it's really snowballed. And so that's the kind of thing that has to happen.
Yeah, to go back to carbon tax just for a moment, because I have a very strong opinion about that. And that is that the globalists, those people who want to set up a one world global government and put everybody else under the jackboot, they have this idea that they can tax carbon. Well, they're selling it to us because carbon is causing the heat in the atmosphere and the global climate warming. That part may be true. I'm not an expert. I've heard arguments opposite to that are very convincing. But here's the elephant in the room that is not being spoken of, because I've had a lot of battles with IRS and tax agencies, and I know how they operate and what they're operating on, and that most of it's fraud. But here's the point. 4 or 5 generations from now, when they're selling us this carbon tax as a way to mitigate carbon, first of all, it will not mitigate carbon. It will do nothing but make a few people rich, and the carbon problem will go on just like it is. Do you think you're going to stop driving a car because somebody's telling you got to pay a little bit more tax? The real reason for carbon tax is slaves. If you're 3 generations down the road and you think, and you're born at a time after carbon tax came in, and you think, well, it must be always been there, and they don't know their history, they'll wind up paying a carbon tax because they just had a child, and that child exhales carbon. And that would be a slave tax on that person. And that's where that's going. It's the elephant in the room is that we all exhale carbon, and if they tax that carbon, we're taxable as a generator of toxins. And they'll shift that argument later to that. So when you have a kid, you go to the hospital, before you can take that kid home, you're going to have to pay several $1,000s advance in tax on what it's expected to do, and it will likely evolve that way. So,
Carbon tax will not do anything for carbon in the atmosphere. It will not do anything, but the carbon tax will line the pockets of somebody. And usually it'll be somebody that's extremely wealthy already.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
So to kind of piggyback on his question, do you guys have any naturally occurring or grassroots programs to implement mentorships under you? Yeah, any of you. YouTube University.
I don't, nothing that's like officially set up, but I know that just, building a relationship with anybody that has something you want to, that you're interested in, just stay in correspondence with them. For example, Eric Dollard gets mail from all over the world, snail mail, because he doesn't do computers, and he writes everybody back. And so over the years, there's people who he's corresponded with over and over and over, back and forth, and they have, essentially been mentored by him, and they, are continuing their studies along those lines. And I think it's pretty much kind of the same as, anybody else. Do you have any ideas on, I don't know.
I mean, it would be
how
really
to amplify that?
Really interesting, like if each one of you were to hold your own, say, retreat-style situation, and you were the teacher.
There is something that I have in mind. Didn't get to do it last year.
You can come do it in our farm in Hawaii. We grow chocolate.
So the one of the plans is Bill in here? Yeah. So there's a mansion on the South Hill that's been offered up to be able to have weekend-style get-togethers where, maybe once a month it's, one particular person where, maybe it's like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all-day intensive for limited amount of people, maybe 5, 6 people, whatever. And so we are going to do that. There's nothing scheduled, But right before the conference, I went to Bill's house, and I mean it's huge. You know, it's almost a 7,000 square foot home on the historical registry. It's absolutely beautiful. There's room to, you know, have the conference in there for, you know, a handful of people. There's, you know, a few rooms where, you know, the presenter or somebody can stay. It's in a convenient location. So that is something that we want to put together and start doing. And I'm sure, you know, something like that could be organized anywhere. For example,
Right.
you know, over in Hawaii, I can help promote something like that to get a presenter and kind of help facilitate that process. And, you know, so, and anybody else who's interested in putting something like that together. A lot of people ask me about these conferences in other areas and stuff. Once a year here is enough for me. But if there's a, you know, team of people who can do different things, any presenters are willing to go, I can help to kind of, you know, move things in that direction. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about it and see who you'd like to maybe have over there, and, you know, do something. So yeah,
Okay,
for
thanks.
sure.
And my last kind of oddball question, we're on this road trip and we're traveling through the United States, and it's about 2 months long, and so our destination was here. And so we've gone 3 weeks from New Mexico to the East Coast, up north to Canada, and then here. And we've seen a lot, but one of the more interesting aspects that we've witnessed is Tom Elpel's house. And he is like a plant nerd to the extreme. He built his own home by hand, using foraged logs and rocks and whatnot. So he is one interesting aspect. But the other aspect that kind of blew my mind, which is a little bit more wild, but some of you guys are probably into, is Devil's Tower. Like, what is that? Is that an ancient tree that was 4 miles tall, that is made of silica and had, when the earth was covered in all these biophotons, that everything just grew massive?
The Facebook memes make it look pretty good.
They do. You know, is
It's-
that the
it's
Avatar
lava.
Tree of Life? It's not lava. Like, that is such a joke. We live on a volcano, and there's no way that any magma or lava rock in Hawaii or anywhere in the world would ever build a fucking tree stump.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, here in Washington, Washington has unique geology where there's, you know, I mean, there's everything from a rainforest to the desert, and there's a lot of basalt everywhere, and there's these basalt columns. Like it's a popular decorative type of building block that you have all these large round columns of basalt, and they just kind of stack them in, you know, like a bundle. And they'll have to like waterfalls and whatever. And so, I don't know, it looks, I've been to Devil's Tower, you know, I don't know, 25, almost 30 years ago or something like that. Never thought about it in those terms back then, but I have seen the pictures, and I don't know, it all kind of makes you wonder. Every time I think of Devil's Tower, I think of Close Encounters.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, mashed potatoes and
Garbage cans.
Yeah, there's a kind of wild documentary about it called "There Are No Forests on Earth," and it's kind of narrated by like a mechanical woman's voice, and she's like, "You must think I'm crazy because here you are, you've seen all these forests your whole lives, and all these trees are like 30 feet to 100 feet tall, and they're so small, like the rings." And just imagine, like, if we know there's the other theory of the Earth where Pangea, but like, why would all the landmass be on one side of the planet instead of like an evolving planet that's growing, and as it's growing, it's expanding and coming out like a toroid, and it's getting bigger, and that's where it's cracking, and more water is forming, and more mass is coming out, and the water levels are shifting. This is a very loaded question. I get it.
No, I mean, there's video animations, and there is that theory that there was no ocean, and if you take all the continents, Pangea, so to speak, and you, it'll just right fit into basically a perfect sphere.
Definitely.
Which makes it look like it did start like that and then started to expand, which, you know, well, what happens in the middle? Maybe there is something to this hollow earth thing. You know, the experiments that Eric has done with pinging inside the earth and these type of experiments seem to indicate that there is something along those lines. I mean, the whole molten, you know, iron ball spinning in the middle of the planet making a magnetic field is, you know, completely ridiculous first thing iron does when it heats up is it can't retain any magnetism. So how's this, big magnetic generator? I don't know. But,
I
even
have a comment on how you could.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you have iron, if you have iron in the earth and it's carrying charge, then that charge represents a current flow, and that will generate a magnetic field.
But if we look at the solar electric type of models, which are pretty much moving forward very rapidly because it's kind of becoming indisputable that there is this electrical connection throughout the bodies, that the magnetic field is generated from the sun. The Earth's magnetic field is generated by the sun. I don't know if you've heard of, had Eric explain it, but if he explained it to you in that context, I think you would probably have a tendency to agree with what he's saying. The Schumann resonance, if you look at the frequency and you look at the Earth ionosphere gap as kind of being a waveguide, that frequency cannot happen there. It has to be going from the ionosphere deep down into the Earth to be able to have that low a frequency. So the whole concept of the Schumann resonance is not a collection of all the lightning strikes on the planet. It's something, but it's not that. Eric has, brought up the experiments and just the data that's showing what is the frequency of all these collective lightning strikes, and it has nothing to do with this Schumann resonance. Maybe related or something like that, but you can't have this, so-called 7.83 cycle per second frequency, which is basically just an average. It goes maybe, 4 to 12 or something like that. It fluctuates, but that's not this frequency going between the land and the ionosphere. So there's something about this inner Earth thing that kind of ties in. I'm not going to say that Earth is hollow. Maybe it is. I don't know. There's big oceans of water way deep down underground, that they discover. So I don't know. Who knows? If anybody has an answer to that, that's. But if you go to YouTube and you look up there's a model showing Pangaea, and it basically creates a perfect sphere. It's very convincing.
And I have one more last oddball question.
Hopefully somebody else can answer it.
It's about lasers. So I think we are an open-minded crowd, that I'm not going to offend anybody if I throw out the idea of a direct energy weapon laser coming out of an airplane, causing forest fires in Northern California and beyond. Does anybody have any insight that they're willing to go out on a limb and share?
You should
talk
to Jeff. He's got pictures. It could be photoshopped. I don't know. But I'm sure he didn't Photoshop them. But it shows the beams coming down, starting fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you objective evidence. That's why I don't say much over here. But I've attended some military-type conferences, and they do have 747s that have lasers on them, and they can direct those lasers and put 1,000 watts per square centimeter, no problem, on something. So there's no reason why they couldn't do what you're suggesting.
Okay.
Those weapons aren't new.
Yeah.
They've been around since at least the 60s.
And probably before that, if they are potentially alien technology from other places. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Stephen? So it's touching on a little conspiracy kind of stuff.
Mysteries. The mysteries of Earth. Everybody likes a good mystery. So exactly. I mean, when I first came here, I got tired of studying dead inventors. I was trying to figure out how Stanmeyer's car worked or Tesla's stuff worked. And I wanted to talk to some real inventors, some live inventors, corporeal inventors who were like me, who had questions like me. So I come here every year to envision the future, and I always get different answers about it. And they vary widely, even from the same person from year to year. It's the most amazing thing. So I haven't heard all of you speak. I think all of you have spoken, but just a brief view of your future, your idea of what the future is, in the specific category that you were talking about, because inventors, they like to think about the outcome of what they're doing. So maybe from just that far end down, just to give us a brief view of what you think.
Wait, let's go this way.
Okay, good.
So right after Walt, I can get mine out of the way.
Okay, because I'm telling you, man, I come and I talk to the same people every year, and they go, "It'll never happen in my lifetime," and then they say, "Oh yeah, it's going to happen this time." And then the next time it's, not until it's all destroyed and everybody's gone away, then we'll use this stuff. And
I suppose that depends on how long your lifetime is.
And Eric's not up there, so I know that at least there won't be one dystopian view of the future. So,
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Okay. I've been threatened many times, and was almost killed once. And I finally told the guys who listen on my phone, if you succeed and you kill me, here's what's going to happen. Everything that I know, everything that I've done will be disseminated worldwide through multiple channels. You will not be able to stop it, and the whole world can have it. And I said, you know what? So if you're smart, you'll pray that I live a long time, because it'll go slower with me alive than it would if I was dead. But then they said, well, I told it to somebody, said, well, what about your investors? And I said, oh, they'll be fine. My stuff can go everywhere, everybody can use it, but we still own it. We own the intellectual property. It's enforceable in the jurisdictions that they're filed in. And so my company and my investors who survive me will become a collection agency. They will just get the lawyers together, and they'll go around and say, oh, that's a nice system you're producing there. We own it, and you owe us this much money, and you'll start paying or you'll be shut down. So they'll collect their money, and they'll do very well. So that was my plan. And that was my chess game move, because if you study martial arts, you turn your opponent's energy against them. If the object they have is to stop my technology by stopping me, then stopping me will accelerate my technology and do exactly the opposite of what they want. So checkmate, at least for a while. Okay. Oh, you've got a mic.
For little gadgets, some of them I came up with, most of them I did not. As far as the RPX, those will continue to be produced. There might be different enhancements and possibly amplifiers available. For the MWO, I'm in there with Jeff all the time, building the pulse modulators. He does all the rest of it, and about 85% of all the parts are fabricated. The goal is, by the end of July, Jeff will finish off the rest of the current batch, and starting in August, he'll start the new batch with 3 to 4 units per month by himself, so I can pull out, and then I will get the other 15% of the stuff that we need fabricated complete, so we don't have to deal with that. Then little by little, it's going to be outsourcing the assembly, so we can actually do some volume. We can just focus on order fulfillment. The next couple products that will be coming out, and this is your question, Stephen, about the actual products and stuff. So like little red light devices from the size of little RPX, maybe a little bit bigger ones that can plug into the same battery and signal generator. Those are going to be produced. Those are all pretty easy projects. After that, there's, when John Bedini was making the solar charge controllers, the S3A12, which is a 3 amp 12 volt linear current regulator solar charge controller, that with the right matched panels, it'll actually bring the flooded cells to 15.3, or which if you do that on every charge cycle, you give a lead acid battery a theoretical infinite lifespan, because the chemistry is 100% reversible as long as you get it to the right charging voltage. And every other commercial charger on the market all chronically undercharges them, and so it's just integrated obsolescence, built-in obsolescence, whatever. So you have to keep buying batteries. Well, I already have he built me one 5 amp 12 volt solar charge controller. I tested it, works pretty good. Actually took it out. I chaperoned on some local Montessori school campouts teaching solar and some of this kind of stuff. So easy, the kids can set it up. But that's, I already have that circuit worked out, tested, it works perfect. It'll be available for flooded cell and sealed gel cell batteries, flooded cell 15.3 limit, 14.8 for gel cell AMG and lithium iron phosphate batteries. So all I have to do with that, bill of cells, boom, quote it, boom, take orders, pre-orders, it's done, 4 to 6 weeks. I'll have it in my hands and they'll all be shipped within a couple weeks. The S2A12, I'm going to put that back into production. The Extreme model, that was really the hammer. That one, the pick chip code magically disappeared right after John died, and I went to help Rhonda pull everything out of the company, put it in storage lockers and that kind of stuff. But I think I have everything for the model before, which even though it's not as strong as the Extreme model, when that came out, there's nothing on the planet that could touch it for, 2 amp, 12 volt solar charger. You're talking about taking 80% of the batteries most people haul off to the dump to bring them back to, 80% of new up to 110% of brand new. You can take a brand new battery off the shelf, run one cycle on one of those chargers, and you will have 110% of the rated capacity of that battery. I've done it so many times, it's ridiculous. That's going to be put back into production. I purchased from John's wife quite a bit of equipment. One of them includes the original Abrams machine. That thing is really kind of, I want to preserve these things just for, preservation's sake. And it's an original unit, and I have some of the original Abrams material. Well, one book, I don't even know if people can get it anymore. But there's a simplified circuit that John came out with. I don't know if you saw the video from Tony Craddock of the Abrams machine that John did with the ignition coil circuit. Fairly simple. You could probably build one yourself for about $100 or something like that if you wanted. It gives us burst of RF. And if you ever looked at his web page on his Rife pages, and then there's some videos where he's showing these little paramecium exploding. That was done with the Abrams machine. That wasn't done with the Rife. That's going to be produced, put into a nice metal box and everything, and it'll probably be, I don't know, maybe the size of a shoebox or something like that, or smaller, but we're going to be putting those into production too. I have a whole encyclopedia of stuff just ready to crank out. It's just the MWO has been all-time consuming, taking all my time for the last 2 years, but we got it to the point where I'm just about, right over that hump to start knocking these other products out. So. And, you'll see the announcements of what's coming when. So that's my personal goal on that particular stuff. And there'll be some different Energizer kits and some other stuff. I have John's, bigger Cromray, so-called drag-free generator and all that. And so there's plans for all that stuff, too. So that's it for me. There's a lot. I mean, literally pages and pages and pages of products that are going to be coming out.
So you want to know what I think my future is going to be?
With development,
well,
whatever.
I think initially, the way I see it right now is we're going to be doing this in a kit form and selling it online as a kit. That way we can get around a lot of other regulation crap that I don't want to have to pay for right now. And it will also depend. I see some investors taking that and blowing that up. I think for the electrical automobile, I think it's an ideal thing, and if they don't steal it, we could see that happening in that direction. I see that that's the vision I see for it, and I see it being installed on more and more homes. I think, I'm a real freedom guy, and that I think if anything, it gives people the opportunity to be more independent. And I think that's extremely important because it gives you privacy and independence. So I think that ideally that we could see that exploding on the market just because there's so many people out there that are fed up with people eavesdropping on their phones, on their on their computers, in their cars. I mean, they can be tracked anywhere you go. For crying out loud, leave us alone. And that's one thing that can be done, I think, that will help people to feel at least a lot more independent and free from some of that.
The technology I'm working on is this Tesla tower stuff that Tesla was supposedly shut down because he was going to take away profits of the power company. But I do envision the Tesla towers being put up. But the utility of them that I'm thinking of is, there was somebody who approached me yesterday, I saw him in the back there, who was saying farms need stuff. You know, where you don't have wire. People in deserts, farms, remote locations where the power company could benefit, make money off this thing, own the technology like the longitudinal multiple access thing that I'm developing. And the other thing about it is it would allow people to have water. There's a company in Arizona somewhere that can create a gallon of water a day for $5,000, but you have to put energy into it. And so I'm picturing this Tesla tower saving lives. But to get around the power companies, they have to own it. They have to own the metering and the towers. Thank you.
So as for me, I don't have commercial activities on a sideband generator, but the next step to take with this technology I'm going to try is to make a programmable carrier frequency and then apply these, say, cancer retarding frequencies that I have shown yesterday from this paper of Meyer and Gesing, and also submit it to lab test. And then let's see what comes out, whether it works well, and then decide the next steps. Apart from this, I'm working on models, gadgets, desktop versions, and toys of devices showing certain effects. That would be my contribution to do something on the mindset, on spreading the mindset, rather than, I don't know, trying to sell a few over Unity devices. I'm not good at that. I couldn't do that. But that's the thing I'm working on.
Well, for me, I didn't appreciate water enough until I started to study the water about 10 years ago. So I do hope through our research, our work, we can catch more attention from people to water and inspire more research about water regarding energy, regarding purification / desalination, and probably most importantly, the biological role of water in all the biological system. And that's what I would like to see, and that's what I hope I can see.
Hey, can you share a little bit about the organization, the nonprofit?
Oh,
Yeah,
so
let everybody know about
Professor
that.
Pollack, Jared Paul.
Tip your mic up.
So Pollack has a new development on the organization called IVS, Institute for Venture Science. I'm not the best person to advocate this, but the overall idea is we're looking for, it seems like we are lacking for more groundbreaking science. I'm not talking about technology. So Professor Pollack initiated and started this institute called Institute for Venture Science. The way it's going to work, it's pretty much like NSF, NIH grant, but it only found science, and it only found possible potential groundbreaking science. And it could be controversial any way you would like it, but if you can present the idea, the model, and the plan of how you conduct an experiment to prove it, I think that's the idea that Professor Pollack started and founded this Institute for Venture Science. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
I had a comment. He mentioned extracting a $5,000 unit to extract, was it a gallon a day or something? There are systems you can buy now for under $1,000 that are solar powered, and they'll give you 10 gallons a day. They're commercially available. And they're only like $600 or $700. So they're not very much.
Do you have the name of it?
No, but I believe the company's in Miami, because I've looked. I've got a whole file of dehumidifier companies. That was the most interesting one. So, but I'll find out. And let Aaron know, and you can check with him. And he'll tell you.
Look like you're about to say something.
I'm just,
Comfortable.
I'm just, yeah.
I do plan on doing something with the plasma ignition as well. There's a couple kits that I have in mind, and you know, one thing besides the products and funding, and one thing I want to bring up is that over the years I've been approached by a lot of people talking about funding and how much money they can bring and that kind of thing. For me, it's not so much needing the money. You know, I'm debt free. I own my own home, or I pay for the privilege of living in a home by paying my extortion payment to the county every year. But you know, so I'm doing okay. I pretty much can self-fund anything that anything that I have an interest in. I can fund it myself. So that's not what the issue is. There's a limited market within my network who are interested in these kind of things. So what I need help with, and others that I work with need help with, is, do you have access to a lot of distribution? Because if you said, hey, I got this connection into O'Reilly's, Home Depot, whatever it happens to be, you know, and we can move, you know, 10,000 units, you know, every couple months for this particular little solar charger, this device or this device, you know, it's easy for me to just, you know, pull 2 weeks straight of overnight, you know, overnighters just to crank out all the bill of materials and all this to get a quote and find out what's the cost going to be for that particular volume that they think that they can do, so I can see if the cost can even come down, you know, because we sold Bedini's chargers for a long time. Peter and I, we sold more than everybody else combined. We sold more than he could produce at the company, and I'd get in trouble if I advertised more than twice a year because we'd be so swamped with orders. We were in a chronic 3-month back order situation for, you know, 8-10 years straight, literally. And people were happy to wait, and they were happy to pay more money than they've ever paid for a battery charger in their life because they knew the benefits. And so if anybody does have connections to some serious distribution outlets, you know, not just talk, but you either got a connection or you're in that position, you want to do something, let me know, because there's a whole lot of stuff that can move forward pretty quick. So, you know, I don't go along with a lot of the funding needs that a lot of people, you know, appear to need. You know, I can, you know, just like Eric Dollard, I can do more with $5,000 than most people will do with $50,000, because you don't need a brand new building. You can do it, you know, very frugal, and if you got enough common sense, you can do a lot with a little bit. So, you know, I'm not into wasting other people's money, and I'm not going to waste my own money either. So, if you do have that kind of connection, you know, let me know, and there's a lot of stuff that can be done. That's one of the only stumbling blocks I really see. So just to let you know, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So, no. You got a comment, Al, or anybody else? Okay.
Hi, Frank from LA. So this is my first time here. It's really good to see all of you who's interested in similar stuff. Otherwise, if you talk about this kind of stuff, people think you're crazy. I think I can contribute a little bit to the conference by maybe give some information. A lot of you are inventors, and you try to do your project, I believe. Just try to see other people's progress and stuff. There's actually a place, because I used to live in San Francisco for 15 years, and I moved to LA recently. My wife worked there, so we moved. So in a way that you can actually go to a place called Makerspace. How many people heard Makerspace here? There you go. So for people who haven't heard of it, it's a place. There's all the equipments there, like mill machine, powder coat, you know, machine, 3D printer, computers, all that stuff. You check in by hour, and then you can actually save your budget. Instead of purchasing equipment, so you can use Makerspace. And I actually just checked, just for you local people. Coeur Lane, just about a mile, 2 miles from here, there's a Makerspace in Coeur Lane. In Spokane, there's called Maker Tool. In Seattle, there's a couple of them. So in every major place, there's a Makerspace. So it will help you to do your development and stuff. because I realized I've seen a lot of you guys' product out there from Silicon Valley. They look really homemade. They're not really polished. And in a way that I feel like, because when I was working on my experiments, I can go through an experiment and object quicker than a lot of people because I have my own 3D printer, computer, the whole lab there. So I can do an experiment once a week or twice a week. So I feel like you guys can actually, time is very valuable for most of us. So you can actually go quicker with using other people's equipments and build stuff really quick and validate the things you do. I think that's something will really save you money by not purchasing any equipment, and you have everything there you can use. And another question for Aaron. How many people heard or watched the show Ancient Aliens on History Channel? Okay, I just came from LA's conference, Ancient Alien conference 2 weeks ago called AlienCon. I was hoping to go in there see people like us there, but 99% people was wearing alien hats. I was a little disappointed, and a lot of reruns and podcasts, and just I think lots of people probably mostly go to Burning Man and stuff like that. But there's one session that's very interesting called Anti-Gravity. This professor, I believe he's still working at the university. I wasn't expecting anyone to go to that particular seminar. As I go in, it was packed. Literally, let's say this room had twice of as big as this, and all the seats are filled. Everyone in there is engineers. And I guess long story short, I don't know the guy. I mean, after the seminar was great. I was like, oh, I love it. It's like I hear most of you guys did your presentations. It's really fun. It's like a TED Talk. Have you heard TED Talk? It's kind of a miniature TED Talk you guys doing here. So, question for Aaron is, I used to go to university here in University of Idaho in Moscow for it's been a while. It's 15 years since I graduated here. To have the conference here, this might be, this is my first time here because I want to come here, but first of all, I don't want to get so close to my college again. It's like going home. It's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to go home. But come here don't you think it's a better, because of the amount of people are interested in this, it's literally times 3, 4. If there is even a small seminar like that, it was packed. The whole room was twice as full. 4 engineers. The Q&A lasts another hour past the seminar. People chasing this guy down the hallway. I don't know. His name's Joseph or something. I don't remember. And so do you think it has to be here in Coeur d'Alene? I have nothing against Coeur d'Alene. I'm just saying to get things out there. Let's say, for example, from Silicon Valley, I do a lot of conference. Like I go to attend a lot of conference and stuff in Mountain View, Palo Alto, and stuff like that. In fact, I just skipped the NASA one for this one. It's the exposure there. I'm not sure we're trying to hide away so we don't get killed by the Men in Black, or if you want to get exposure, be legit out there, you literally need to be a place with airports. This is probably easier to get to. It's actually cost 3 times more for me to fly here than me flying to San Francisco. And the hotel, the same thing, costs $1,500. It's crazy in this small town. Could stay in Vegas for 2 weeks. So I guess I don't know.
So what's up with this strange Hayden, Idaho location?
Yeah, why here? I mean,
versus the casino across the street from the Spokane airport.
Even Spokane, even somewhere that is easier to get to, and you get more exposure.
Yeah, so I can give you a little background. So in 2010 and 2011, John Bedini did conferences for the first time in since the early 80s. And so he decided to do them. This was with somebody else running it who really kind of ripped him off and ripped a lot of people off in a lot of ways, and he kind of got booted, but John was kind of excited to kind of get out and start sharing more of his work. So John and I and then Peter started doing these conferences. We did it here. John won't go anywhere else, right? So he picked this location. His company is I could drive there in probably 3 minutes. I could probably drive to his home in 3 minutes. He was a trustee of the Eagles Lodge here. This is kind of like his second home. This is almost kind of like his church, sort of. not meaning the conference, but just his community here with the lodge and the nonprofit and everything. And so we got a really good deal as far as like room rates, and to be able to do it at an affordable price where it actually makes it worth our time. If we did this, because I checked into different hotels, and I've been going to conferences for years, because I love it. Mostly health conferences. When I used to own like a vitamin store, health food shop, and stuff, I used to go around. They'd be at big hotels and all this kind of thing. Well, started looking into it, and it wouldn't be. I'd have to charge $1,200-$1,500 a ticket for it to even be worth it. If we want to provide meals or something, all these places practically want to force you to use their own catering. They make it look like they're giving you this big discount on the room. $50 for 5 meals. I mean, you're not going to find that at any conference. They will charge, 15 to 25, and that's at the low end. If you have like 1,000 people, to fill up 2 or 3 of the big bays in a hotel or something. But for something like this, you can literally pay $20-25 per person to use their catering to do that. I mean, that alone, how much is somebody going to wind up spending coming to the conference? So cost is a big issue for it. Doing something like that. The size of the venue, to me, we've kind of found this is a perfect size. Honestly, I might be just kind of be regurgitating, my own belief on it, that I've told myself this over the last several years, which is that at this size, it is more manageable. Raise your hand if you feel like you got pretty good personal quality time with any presenter you wanted to talk to this whole weekend. You're not going to have this many hands raised at a conference where we might have 500 people. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Well, thank you for your comments, and maybe we can chat about it.
Yeah, it's a great conference. I really love talking
thank
to
you.
people like us. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Maybe a couple questions, and we'll maybe wrap it up here in about 5 minutes or so.
Cool. Mike, what was the, you described a coil that Norman kind of thought of that was kind of toroidal. Could you describe it a little bit more, or is that something you're trying to keep close to your
Well, we're kind of
chest?
keeping it close to the vest right now, but
Yeah.
just suffice it to say it's a compound coil that is boosting it's taking that voltage that's coming out, converting it, and so we're getting a much higher current coming out.
Okay.
And so we feel it's a unique product.
Yeah. Cool.
So.
And then Stefan and/or Aaron, what was the circuit for the? I don't know what to call it. Stefan, your
for the RPX.
thing you grip. What was? Didn't you say you got it kind of a rough model of the circuit from somewhere else, or?
That was from Bedini's book. It's called RPX.
Okay.
Little square blue book. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, if you go to bedinirpxbook.com, it's like, I don't know, 4.5 hour or something DVD set, plus a book where John Bedini walks, from A to Z all the way through on what the sideband generator is about, all his experience with the Rife technology, how the circuit works, his theory on other stuff. And there is a schematic in the book that if you build it, it'll do the exact same thing as these units that I have manufactured. The one in the book is just a little bit trickier. It's basically the same circuit, but it's one with little tuning inductors and stuff. But if you have an electrical engineering background, you can figure it out and make it work. It's not a complicated process. This is just a little bit simpler circuit that's easier for manufacturing, because it's all surface mount and it's not using all those things. So, but bedinirpxbook.com, you can make one yourself if you want. Go ahead, Al.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to make mention to Dr. Russell, Walter Russell's book, Atomic Suicide, is a very interesting read. People should look it up and have a read. That said, I've done a lot of research like all of you, and one thing I had to do because there's so much BS out in the world is to connect with nature, because nature always reveals reality. That said, I did a study in volcanism and volcanic lightning. And what I realized is that during a volcanic eruption, a violent one, you'll get volcanic lightning discharges that spontaneously go off because of the increased conductivity in the ash plume, which creates what's called volcanic glass that manifests inside the lightning bolt itself. That said, You can look at the NASA archive photographs and see those unbelievable images of the nebula clouds that turn and move. Well, you're going to get what's called volcanic lightning that also goes off in those nebula clouds, which creates the stars. Just like volcanic glass is created, so too does it create the stars and all the planets during that process. By it goes off, creates a magnetic helical bubble, and that flings out due to universal expansion away from another star that comes out of these clouds. And that'll go on for how many billions of years before the magnetic helix becomes destabilized. It collapses, the whole thing goes supernova, the largest explosion in the universe, back to universal expansion. That force, to me, is the same description as the anti-gravity force between singularities. So you can take the concept, using nature's concepts, and reproduce them in a device that becomes a levity disk instead of the star, an artificial one, so it'll levitate away from the Earth, which is also a type of singularity recognizing the equator, like the magnetic field, the neutral magnetic field, which is revolutionary. When you look at the structure of the magnetic field, the geometry, which is an actual helix, mimicking nature. So what would be your thoughts on that? Okay. That unifies the world ideologies into a single creative process that we are all
The exact kind of
involved in.
question I would expect from you, Al.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, the only thing that I think of as you talk about that, we talk about all what's in the ether and all the energy that's in the ether, and I've talked about this with several people. But when you look at those space images that we see from the Hubble telescope or whatever, those things relate to the things we see right here on Earth. For example, when you look at a spiral galaxy and the shape of it, and then you look this summer, I'm sure we'll get to see pictures of a hurricane, and you look at how that hurricane is, and you look at a cumulonimbus cloud and what it's doing, and you look at some of those nebula, the energy is similar. The power that made the universe controls the universe, and there is nothing different there. It's just in magnitude. All of those things exist right here in our sphere, right here on the third rock. Those things all exist, and it's just in magnitude. So there's really nothing different happening here than happens throughout the universe. And there is no end to the universe. There is no outside curtain. Our finite minds have a hard time thinking about that, but it is infinite. It goes forever in any direction. And we, as human beings, are not finite beings. We are infinite beings. We are matter that cannot be created or destroyed. Our bodies may be able to, but this intelligence and so on, it is an eternal thing. And we are not just passers-by here for an instant. We're here for a bit, but that doesn't, we are going to go on, no matter what you may think. All of those things are on a macro scale, and we're on more of a micro scale. And those things are going on an even more micro scale right within our bodies. And so when we talk about being in balance and in harmony with nature, it's that very kind of thing that we need to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you, guys.
One last question and then one announcement, and we'll wrap it up.
I stumbled across this a few years ago, and it was a poor video quality, I think done in the 70s, I think. Powers of 10, is that right, Greg? It's a video on YouTube, Powers of 10. And it starts off with a view of a couple that's at a grassy, place. They're having a picnic. And it describes the activity and the perspective from, let's say, a drone 10 feet away. And then it's to the first, the 10th, 10th. And you go out and all these things that we're drilling into and reaching out to and trying to unfold and, explain in compartmentalized, understandable subsets. Then it does exactly the same, but in the inverse. And like you say, we are eternal beings, we are eternal creators, and it's by our intention and our will to give that creation is even multiplied, or if it's on a greedy negative, it's to destroy and decay. And it was just inspiring, again, to be here. But even though it's an old video, it's really a reminder of the magnificence of the core little things that when you magnify, or in a microscopic sense, it's like infinitely deep as it is infinitely small and infinitely large. It's like it has no end.
Talking about? That was called Cosmic Zoom and Powers of 10 or
Powers of
whatever
10.
you said. That was a copy. But the original one was called Cosmic Zoom.
But you've
'Cause
seen
I
it,
remember watching it in the 60s on acid, and it was cool.
wasn't it?
On that note, everybody, thank you so much. Have safe travels home. We hope to see you next year. We have a lot of exciting things planned. Lots of love and gratitude, and hang out for a few hours, and maybe around 6 p.m. or so, we're going to hit crickets and party all night. See you later, everybody.